We're always grappling with how to shape the minds and values of future generations. It's a conversation happening everywhere, really.
Hmm.
And it really came into focus back in 2015, didn't it? At that World Congress.
Hmm.
Educating today and tomorrow, a renewing passion.
Absolutely. And one of the key themes that kept coming up, especially for schools connected to the Catholic Church, is this fundamental question.
Yeah.
In our modern world, what does it actually mean for an educational institution to have a Catholic identity? It's a big question.
It really is.
And as our source material for this deep dive points out, this isn't just, abstract theory floating around.
Right.
The Congregation for Catholic Education's instruction, the identity of the Catholic school for a culture of dialogue, well, it directly addresses the real-world concerns, things voiced in their own assemblies, in talks with bishops.
So real practical stuff.
Exactly. We're seeing conflicts pop up stemming from different takes on what Catholic identity actually involves in schools, especially now with the world being so interconnected, more interreligious, intercultural dialogue. It gets complex.
Okay, so this instruction, that's our main guide today, and it sounds like it's trying to maybe provide some solid ground in these often tricky discussions.
That's the goal.
So, what's the core mission here for us? What should you, our listener, the learner, really take away by the time we're done with this deep dive?
Well, our mission is basically to distill the key parts of this instruction, to bring some clarity to the fundamental principles, but also the practical side, the implications of what makes up a Catholic identity in schools today.
Yeah.
Think of it as aiming for a clear, thorough understanding, but without, getting totally bogged down in overly complicated details.
Right. Clear and comprehensive. So, how does the instruction itself lay all this out? What's the roadmap, the structure?
It's pretty logical, actually. Structured into three main chapters. First, it looks at where Catholic schools fit within the church's bigger mission.
Okay.
Second, it digs into the roles of all the different people and groups who's responsible for promoting and, crucially, verifying this identity.
Right, the actors involved.
Exactly. And then finally, Chapter 3 tackles some of the tougher parts, the critical challenges, the nuanced issues that can definitely come up.
Sounds like a solid plan. Let's dive into that first chapter then. Catholic schools and the mission of the church. What are the sort of foundational ideas we need to get?
Okay, so the chapter kicks off with a really, I think, powerful image. The church as both mother and teacher.
Mother and teacher.
Yeah, the concept with deep roots, going back to Vatican II.
Yeah.
You see it in documents like Gaudium Mater Ecclesia, Mater et Magistra. The idea is that the church doesn't just generate believers, it nurtures them, guides them with real maternal care. It extends its love and teaching to everyone. It's very formative.
That's a compelling image to start with. So, building on that, what fundamental principles of Christian education in schools does this instruction really hammer home?
It highlights several key ones, drawing heavily from that Vatican II declaration, Gravissimum Educationis. First off, education is framed as a fundamental human right,
All right. All right.
rooted in the inherent dignity of every single person. The instruction even quotes directly, saying everyone has a right to an education that aligns with their ultimate goal, their talents, their culture, and also helps build harmony and peace in society.
Okay. A universal right tied to dignity. Now, who's primarily responsible for making sure that happens?
The instruction is very clear here. Parents. They hold the primary responsibility. They have the prior right to choose the kind of education they want for their
The
kids.
prior right, that's strong language.
It is. And it stresses this choice must be free, according to their conscience. And because of that, civil authorities, the government, they have a duty to make sure there's a real diversity of schools available and to actually support families in exercising that right.
Makes sense the family is the first educator.
Yeah.
So where does the church's role fit in then?
The church sees education as, well, an essential part of its mission. Part of evangelization, yes, but also part of the holistic or integral development of the human person.
So not just charity work.
No, it's deeper than that.
Yeah.
It's not just philanthropy or filling a social gap. The real aim is to infuse a person's whole life with the Spirit of Christ, and for those baptized, to initiate them into the mystery of salvation. It's much more than just book learning. It's about deep spiritual formation woven right through everything.
So it's way more integrated than just having, say, a religion class tacked on.
Exactly.
And the people who have to make this happen day to day, the teachers must be absolutely crucial.
Oh, absolutely critical. The instruction puts huge emphasis on teachers, both their initial training and their ongoing formation. It stresses that their work is a genuine apostolate.
An apostolate, like a calling.
Yes, a service not just to the church, but to society as a whole. And this demands more than just subject knowledge and teaching skills. It requires strong religious understanding, yes, but also a personal witness. They need to embody Christ in their own lives, at least imperfectly. Teachers in Catholic schools are really seen as living the values they teach.
It sounds like being a teacher in a Catholic school carries this unique weight, this specific purpose. What about working together? Does the instruction talk about collaboration?
It does quite a bit. It really underscores the fundamental need for partnership, especially between parents and teachers. That's seen as foundational for the students' well-being, their whole formation.
The parent-teacher connection.
Vital. But it goes beyond that, too.
Huh?
The instruction calls for broader cooperation at the diocesan level, national, even international, to support the mission, not just of Catholic schools, but non-Catholic ones, too, for the good of the whole community.
Cooperation really seems like a recurring theme. Now, the Catholic school itself, how does the instruction define its core nature? What is it, essentially?
Well, drawing from church documents like Lumen Gentium, it emphasizes a Catholic school isn't just an institution. It's meant to be a genuine community.
A community, not just a building.
Right. Beyond the academic stuff, its defining feature is creating this special atmosphere, one that's animated by the gospel, spirit, freedom, and charity. The big goal. Helping young people grow into the new creatures they became at baptism, developing their own personalities, sure, but also guiding them to see the world, human existence through the lens of faith. It's about shaping minds and hearts in a specific environment.
So intentionally cultivating a certain ethos, shaping a distinct worldview. Now, it mentions a dynamic profile of Catholic school identity. What does that imply? What's the significance there?
That's crucial. It highlights this understanding that while the core Christian vision of life is constant, unchanging, Catholic schools also have to respond to history unfolding, to society's evolving needs.
Adapting to the times.
Exactly. They need to adapt teaching methods, pedagogical approaches to the here and now, but stay deeply rooted in that fundamental identity. And, that's not always easy.
I can imagine.
Like navigating changing societal views on, say, gender, while holding firm to Catholic teaching that takes careful thinking, discernment, a willingness to engage respectfully, not just rigidly sticking to the past, or conversely, just ditching core beliefs.
Adaptability with fidelity. Sounds like a constant tightrope walk.
It can be.
The instruction also gives a broader definition of just what a school is in general.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It stresses that a school's job goes way beyond just developing intellectual skills.
Okay.
It includes forming the ability to make sound judgments, passing on our cultural heritage, fostering key values, prepping students for future work, and nurturing positive social skills. Basically, contributing to the whole person's education and being that vital first social setting outside the family.
And within that broad idea of school, what makes one specifically Catholic? What's the defining mark?
The defining element is its clear, explicit reference to a Christian understanding of life, centered on Jesus Christ.
Centered on Christ.
Yes. This provides the framework for tackling those big human questions through a dynamic dialogue between reason and faith. And crucially, this dialogue isn't seen as causing conflict or contradiction.
Not faith versus reason.
No, quite the opposite. It's seen as a path to accessing a fuller, more complete grasp of truth, including truths that go beyond what empirical science alone can tell us. Excordia Ecclesiae talks about this beautifully too.
So faith and reason working together, complementing each other. Got it. Now, who are these schools for? Who are they meant to serve?
The instruction really emphasizes that Catholic schools are part of the Church's wider pastoral mission and are meant to be schools for everyone, with a special enduring focus on the most vulnerable.
The weakest members of society.
Yes. It reminds us that, historically, many Catholic schools started specifically to serve the poor, the marginalized. And that commitment continues today, tackling new kinds of poverty, extending to things like vocational training, special programs for students with disabilities. That history really underlines the Church's dedication to reaching those most in need.
That historical context is powerful. The instruction also talks about the vital role of educators, both lay people and those in consecrated life, right?
Absolutely. It stresses that in a Catholic school, learning and formation are deeply linked. Subjects aren't just about facts, they're about developing values, exploring deep truths.
So the educators need to embody that.
Precisely. They need educators lay and consecrated alike who aren't just experts in their fields, but are also convinced of the mission and serve as living examples, reflecting, even imperfectly, the ultimate teacher, Christ. Their lives, in a way, become part of the curriculum.
It really lifts the teaching job beyond just employment. It sounds like a genuine calling.
Exactly. For lay Catholic educators, their professional work is seen as elevated to a Christian vocation, a personal calling within the Church.
And for consecrated persons.
For them, their educational work is often a core part of their specific vocation, a path to holiness and to pursuing justice, especially serving young people who might be most at risk.
Now, given the focus on dialogue, it seems the instruction is very aware of our diverse world. It talks about educating to dialogue. What's the core idea?
Yes, this is a really critical point today. In societies that are more and more multicultural, multi-religious, the challenge is, how do you stay true to your own Catholic vision while also developing the ability to witness to it, to understand different views, and to genuinely dialogue with people holding different beliefs?
Balancing fidelity and openness.
Right. The instruction notes that even in places with long Christian traditions, Catholic schools often find themselves in a kind of missionary situation. They need to clearly articulate their gospel-inspired project, but without demanding everyone sign up to the faith. Instead, they create an environment where exploring faith is welcomed, encouraged, fostering intellectual and spiritual openness.
Intentionally creating that space for seeking truth. What other key aspects of education does it highlight regarding content and approach?
Well, it underscores the lasting importance of knowledge, passing on cultural and scientific heritage, developing professional skills, the basics, you could say.
Sure.
But crucially, it repeats the need for that synthesis of faith, culture, and life in the whole educational experience. And to do that well, ongoing, thorough teacher formation is absolutely vital. It empowers educators to create really enriching learning environments and help students in that journey of self-discovery, making conscious life choices.
This idea of Catholic schools as ecclesial entities participating in the Church's wider evangelizing mission, can you unpack that a bit? What does ecclesial mean in practice here?
Being ecclesial means these schools are intrinsically, organically connected to the Church's life and overall mission. The instruction emphasizes that dialogue isn't just a tactic, it's fundamental to the Church's very being, rooted in God's own Trinitarian nature and relationship with humanity.
So schools need to reflect that.
Yes, Catholic schools must embody this grammar of dialogue in their everyday life, their whole ethos. It means combining a strong sense of their own distinct Catholic identity with a genuine, respectful openness to others' diversity. It's a way of being in the world, mirroring the Church itself.
And Pope Francis's specific guidelines on dialogue come in here too.
They do. The instruction specifically highlights 3 key guidelines from Pope Francis for real dialogue. First, deep respect for your own identity and the other's identity. Second, the courage to accept differences, not shy away from them. And third, sincerity of intentions all the way through. These principles offer a really valuable map for navigating complex interactions.
It sounds like the instruction is pushing for a very active, engaged kind of education. It uses the phrase, an education that goes forth. What's that about?
Yeah, that's an evocative phrase. It captures education as this dynamic, outward-looking movement. It's inherently collaborative, a team effort.
Right.
It's ecologically conscious, aware of our responsibility to creation. It's fundamentally inclusive. And it's intentionally focused on making peace. It's presented as a needed response to what the instruction calls an educational emergency.
An emergency.
Stemming from a breakdown, it suggests, in the traditional educational compact, that understanding between families, schools, and society about their roles.
And this education that goes forth links directly to Pope Francis's idea of a global compact on education.
Exactly. The instruction highlights how this global compact aims to build meaningful relationships, form people committed to community service. It calls for teaching based on witness, knowledge, and real dialogue as drivers for change, personal, social, environmental change, all resting on human and spiritual wisdom guided by justice.
And finally, this first chapter wraps up by stressing educating to the culture of care. What's the core idea there?
The instruction explains this culture of care starts in the family, but needs to extend out to all educational places. It's based on deeply recognizing every single person's dignity and their fundamental rights.
How do you build that culture?
Through deliberate practice, patient listening, constructive dialogue, fostering mutual understanding. These are seen as essential for weaving that fabric of relationships for the sake of a humanity capable of speaking the language of fraternity. It's about building a society grounded in empathy and respect.
Wow, okay. That first chapter really does lay an incredibly comprehensive foundation for the mission and principles of Catholic education. Let's shift now to Chapter 2, the actors responsible for promoting and verifying Catholic identity. Who are the key players carrying this responsibility?
Right, so this chapter stresses it's a shared responsibility. It belongs to the entire educating school community.
The whole community.
Everyone. Students, parents, teachers, all the non-teaching staff, the school leadership, management, everyone. The instruction makes it crystal clear. Everyone in this community has a part to play in recognizing, respecting, and actively witnessing to the school's official Catholic identity, the one laid out in its specific educational project. It's a collective effort.
So it's not just dumped on the principal or the religion department.
Not at all.
What about the students and parents specifically? What are their roles?
Students are seen as active participants in their own education, gradually taking on more ownership as they grow. Parents, as we touched on, are reaffirmed as the primary educators, with both the right and the duty to choose Catholic education.
Right, that primary responsibility.
And the Church strongly encourages all its members to actively support Catholic schools. Plus, that close, ongoing cooperation between parents and teachers is seen as absolutely essential for the students' holistic growth.
Okay. And the teachers and administrative staff, what specific obligations do they have in this picture?
Teachers are singled out as having a particularly weighty responsibility. Because of their direct influence, their role as potential models. The instruction even uses the term ecclesiastical munus and office for their role.
An ecclesiastical office, that's significant.
It underscores why schools need clear, strong criteria for hiring teachers based on adherence to church doctrine and living a consistent Christian life. And importantly, even non-Catholic staff members are obligated to fully recognize and respectfully uphold the school's basic Catholic character.
That's a key point. The responsibility extends to everyone working there. What about school leaders? Are they just managers, or is there more to it?
Definitely more. The instruction stresses their educational leaders with an ecclesial, a pastoral mission, working closely with church pastors.
Pastoral leaders, not just administrators.
Exactly. They're responsible for clearly articulating the school's mission in line with its Catholic identity, while also respecting everyone's freedom of conscience. Their role covers the curriculum, ensuring activities align, and they also have the authority and duty to step in if teachers or students act contrary to Catholic school law.
The instruction also mentions educational charisms. What are those, and who usually embodies them in schools?
Educational charisms are basically the unique gifts, the founding inspirations that different religious orders, apostolic societies, and lay associations bring to education. Think of the specific spirit of the Jesuits, or the Dominicans, or many other groups throughout history.
Ah, the different religious orders' approaches.
Precisely. The instruction highlights the ongoing role of these institutes of consecrated life, societies of apostolic life, and various faithful associations, public and private, that have founded and still run so many Catholic schools worldwide. Each brings its unique flavor, its charism, to education.
Now, getting right to the core of this chapter, how does the instruction actually define what makes a school officially Catholic? What are the must-haves?
Okay, the definition really hinges on its unity in communion with the Church at every level. If a school is run directly by what church law calls a public juridic person, like a religious institute, for example.
Okay, an official church entity.
Right. Then it's considered Catholic ipso iure by the law itself, automatically.
Yeah.
But if a school is run by individual lay people or a private group, it needs formal recognition as Catholic from the proper church authority,
Which is usually.
usually the local diocesan bishop. And this is crucial. No institution can just call itself a Catholic school without that explicit consent and recognition. It's a formal designation.
So that formal recognition is key, which leads us nicely to the service of ecclesiastical authority. What's the bishop's main role here?
The diocesan bishop has a truly central role. He's the one responsible for discerning and protecting the Catholic identity of all schools in his diocese. He has to respect the different educational charisms present, but also coordinate them.
What does that involve, practically?
His specific duties include things like formally recognizing these educational efforts, giving the okay to establish new Catholic schools, making sure church law is followed, issuing necessary local rules, visiting all the Catholic schools regularly, ideally every 5 years at least.
Wow, regular visits.
Yes, exercising general oversight. And he has the authority to appoint, approve, or even sometimes remove religion teachers. And in certain situations, other teachers too, if there are serious issues with doctrine or moral conduct, always respecting due process, of course.
That's a significant level of oversight. What about local parishes and priests? Do they have a specific role?
Yes, in many cases, Catholic schools are run directly by the diocese or by individual parishes. The parish priest often acts as the representative of the entity responsible for the school.
So direct involvement from the hierarchy.
It highlights that close tie between the local church community and its schools, and the hierarchy's direct accountability in overseeing and sometimes running these institutions.
The instruction also talks about dialogue between the bishop, consecrated educators, and lay people involved. Why is that communication so important?
Regular meetings, open communication, they're absolutely essential for building mutual understanding, promoting teamwork, and tackling challenges effectively. The instruction wisely notes that many potential problems can often be sorted out through sincere dialogue, sometimes without needing formal action from the bishop. It's about trust and shared goals.
What about bigger church structures like national bishops' conferences or even the Vatican? What's their role regarding schools?
Okay, so episcopal conferences or synods or councils of hierarchs, they can issue general norms for Catholic schools and religioushood within their territory. They adapt the universal principles to their specific local context.
Tailoring it locally?
Right. They also play a big role in advocating for financial support for Catholic schools, maybe setting up special commissions for education. Then, the Apostolic See, primarily through the Congregation for Catholic Education, has a subsidiary but vital role,
Subsidiary meaning?
meaning it supports the local efforts. It promotes the fundamental principles of Catholic education worldwide, sets general norms, offers guidance to bishops, and acts as the final court of appeal, reviewing petitions and appeals on these matters.
So, a whole network of responsibility, from the parish right up to Rome, which brings us to the final chapter, some critical aspects. Sounds like this is where we get into the weeds, the tricky parts. What are some of those divergent interpretations of Catholic that it points out?
Yeah, the instruction is quite shrewd here. It notes that understanding and applying the term Catholic to a school isn't always straightforward. It goes beyond just ticking legal or doctrinal boxes. It flags several potentially problematic ways of thinking.
Like what?
One is what it calls a reductive view. This basically limits the school's Catholic identity to just certain bits, maybe the chaplain, the religion classes, instead of seeing it as something that should infuse the whole school community in everything it does.
So it's about the whole ethos, not just pockets of Catholicism.
Exactly. The whole school should live it.
What other problematic views does it mention?
Well, it draws a distinction between a purely formal or legalistic view focusing only on following the rules and a kind of vague, charismatic view.
Charismatic view.
Yeah, one that might talk about a general Catholic spirit or Christian inspiration, but doesn't necessarily connect clearly with church authority or apply specific norms. It also critiques a narrow view,
Narrow meaning.
meaning one that tends to exclude people who aren't seen as fully Catholic. The instruction contrasts this with the open, welcoming model of a church which goes forth, engaging in dialogue with everyone, whatever their background. It's calling for both clarity and inclusivity.
These different views could definitely cause friction. The instruction also tackles the need for clarity of competences in legislation.
Yes, very
Well.
important. It stresses the need for clear roles and responsibilities based on that principle of subsidiarity, making decisions at the most local, appropriate level.
Subsidiarity, right?
It also highlights having clear, up-to-date statutes or rule books that spell out who does what and the procedures involved. A big challenge often is that dual legal framework.
Ah, yes. Church law and state law.
Exactly. Catholic schools have to navigate both, and sometimes state laws can clash with church teaching or discipline. This can create real tension. So the instruction emphasizes having really clear mission statements or codes of conduct backed up legally through contracts to ensure everyone's on the same page regarding expectations.
And what about those really sensitive issues and areas it flags?
These are the tough ones.
Yep.
Selecting and keeping staff based not just on professional skills, but also on their adherence to doctrine and living a consistent Christian life.
That can be controversial.
It can. Also, handling disciplinary or doctrinal conflicts. The instruction stresses using proportional measures, seeing dismissal as a last resort after exploring all other options. Then there's navigating state laws that might conflict with religious freedom,
Right.
and even internal disagreements within the local church about a school's future, handling those through dialogue while respecting roles. And finally, being responsible stewards of the school's resources, prioritizing the educational mission over just finances, especially when facing potential closure. These all need careful judgment.
It really sounds like practical guidance for messy, real-world situations. The last section of this chapter talks about encounter and convergence to consolidate Catholic identity. What's the philosophy there?
The core idea is that Catholic identity shouldn't be a wall, but a meeting place, a space where different ideas and actions can come together to actually strengthen the school's mission. Different views aren't threats. They can be resources for finding solutions
So embrace diversity of thought to some extent.
within limits. The instruction wisely brings up that classic principle. In essentials, unity. In doubtful matters, liberty. In all things, charity.
Unity, liberty, charity.
Exactly. Clarity on the core stuff, freedom to discuss and approach other things differently, and always, always guided by love and respect.
And Pope Francis's call to be builders of unity fits right in here.
Perfectly. The instruction strongly echoes that. Prioritize unity over conflict. Face disagreements openly, constructively, aiming to create new ways forward. And the guide for this: live faith, grounded in the gospel, and deliberately cultivating real dialogue, open, honest communication within the whole church community before and during tensions. It's about building collaboration.
The instruction also mentions being generators of development processes and developers of real and lasting solutions. What are the key takeaways there?
Being generators of development processes is about actively starting positive change, fostering growth, not just digging in your heels or defending the status quo. It calls for deep discernment.
Discernment.
Yes, carefully considering all sides of an issue, the human, spiritual, legal, subjective, practical aspects. The instruction warns against rushing to judgment or making rash statements about Catholic identity issues.
Okay, take time, think deeply.
Right. And being developers of real and lasting solutions emphasizes tackling problems locally whenever possible, involving the people directly affected. Avoid just kicking conflicts upstairs unnecessarily, though always upholding the right to appeal to the apostolic, see if needed. It's about empowering local communities to find workable, lasting answers.
And finally, that principle. The whole is greater than the part. What's the main message?
This really reminds everyone to think about the bigger picture. How does this specific conflict or decision affect the entire church, locally and universally? It stresses the need for prudence, wisdom, a long-term view when seeking solutions. The ultimate goal is fruitful, lasting collaboration in the vital mission of Catholic education. Think beyond the immediate issue.
This has been incredibly helpful, really unpacking a dense but crucial document. To wrap up our deep dive, what would you say is the single most important message of this instruction overall?
Well, I think at the end of the day, the instruction serves as a truly vital guide. It helps navigate the, let's face it, complex realities of maintaining and strengthening Catholic identity in education today, in a world that changes so fast. It really underscores the absolute need for unity, for commitment to real dialogue, and for a laser focus on the core evangelizing mission of Catholic schools within the Church as a bigger picture. It's a call for clarity, teamwork, and renewed purpose.
And the ultimate goal of all this effort, what's the intended outcome?
The ultimate aim really is to form individuals, people with a strong, integrated foundation in both faith and reason, people equipped to actively help build a more just, fair, and fraternal society.
Making a difference in the world.
Exactly. And this vision ties right into Pope Francis's call for that global compact on education and the urgent need to rediscover balance in our lives, inner balance, solidarity with others, our relationship with nature, our spiritual destiny. It's about nurturing whole people who can be agents for positive change.
So, for you, the learner, listening today, here's a thought to ponder as we finish. How might these principles we've discussed apply beyond just formal Catholic schools? Think about any community, any organization trying to hold on to its core identity in our diverse, shifting world. What are those non-negotiable essentials that truly demand unity? And where could embracing liberty, allowing for discussion, difference, dialogue, actually foster deeper understanding, resilience, and maybe even growth for everyone involved? That's certainly something worth thinking about.